Hey, I'm Anthony Cafiero, Solution Engineer here at Sigma, and today I'll be walking you through our portfolio performance and risk demo. Now, there's going to be two key things to note about this demo as we go through. First is that we have established a live connection back to the cloud data warehouse. So we are leveraging the speed, the scale, the compute of that data warehouse so that your users can analyze data at a much larger scale. This means for your technical teams, they'll be able to build much quicker. And for your non-technical teams, more of your business users, they'll be able to build more on top of the data at scale. The second key thing to note about this demo is that everything you'll see here is built off of spreadsheet functions and formulas. So we're using all the same formulas that users are used to using in Excel to build out some incredible dashboards, visualizations, tables, pivot tables, and exploratory analysis. Now, we're going to start kind of backwards. We're going to actually start from a build from scratch to see what it takes to build out a workbook that kind of looks like this. Then second step, we'll revisit this workbook in order to explore and interrogate and investigate the data. And then lastly, we'll actually take an action off of our portfolio by rebalancing and doing a quick what if analysis. So let's go ahead and jump into our first tab here, which I intentionally left blank. Now, if a user comes into Sigma and they have an ad hoc question that they want to ask, and it isn't already answered by some other workbook or dashboard and so on, what they're able to do is actually access that data at scale to build out the answer, all using the same functions and formulas they're used to using in spreadsheet tools. Now, to do that, I'll jump into Explore mode here. I'll grab a table for my first element, and then I'll surf across all my different tables and data sets. Now here you can see we have access directly to the connections in Snowflake where I can quickly go ahead, access the data, and begin to work with it. Instead of using this to build out my quick ad hoc use case, I'm actually going to use what's called a Sigma data set. It's kind of like a fully governed, pre-built, and modeled, and kind of a business-ready data set that I, as a business user, can work with confidently to answer all of my ad hoc questions. Now, this might be also used in some of my other workbooks as the data source, but it also gives our users a confident source, an endorsed source to build out their ad hoc workflows. So I'll go ahead and add that into my workbook here. And now that it's in my workbook, again, we're never actually moving, persisting, or storing data. So all the data stays in the data warehouse. Instead, we're showing a preview of it here. And what that's going to allow me to do as a business user is work right on top of it. I can do things like duplicate a date column and truncate that down to my preferred time grain being year. I can add new calculations directly on top of the data to calculate, in this case, our price difference day over day. And we'll go ahead and change the format there. And all that this is actually becoming is machine-generated SQL. We're giving business users a very familiar interface to work with data, and then Sigma's doing the hard part. We're translating that into machine-generated SQL and executing that against the warehouse. Now, in many cases, users have data that doesn't necessarily live in the warehouse just yet. Whether that's manual data or whether that's just one-off data, Sigma gives them the ability to actually get that data into the warehouse, into the single source of truth, which is then going to allow them to leverage it throughout their analysis. So in this case here, I know I have my industry mapping. I can see my different industries in the data, but I know I'm missing my sectors. So what I might want to do is add in my sector mapping table through uploading a CSV, and then be able to tie that back into my analysis. So once again, we'll grab a new table element. We'll go ahead and upload a CSV here. And I'll grab my sector mapping and hit save. Now again, Sigma is never storing or persisting any of your data. So even in this case, we're actually just writing this back to Snowflake, creating a first class net new table, and that's going to allow you to bring it directly into your analysis. Now we could for sure do things like joins or unions to get this data all modeled into one table, but we also give users a very familiar way of doing this as well. And that's called a lookup. It's essentially a VLOOKUP where they can go ahead and grab their data, in this case, our sector. We'll bring over the sector code and then, the sector description, and then we'll join on the sector code. We have a 100% match, which is awesome. So I can hit done now, and there we have it. We can see all of our sectors in our global pricing data, and we're ready to keep going. Now from here, we can start creating some more end analytical content. We'll create what we call child elements so that we can start to summarize and analyze this data. My initial question might have been, hey, what's the average volume we have across all our different sectors? I can now go ahead and add that into my pivot table. We'll rename that, and we'll drag and drop volume up, and we'll just quickly average that, and we'll also look at this year over year. I'll do some quick formatting, and we'll also add some conditional formatting so that we can draw our attention to areas that we want to look at. So here we have our sector analysis, and we can continue on in our journey here. What I also might want to do is add in a visualization, and it's the same exact process. So again, if we want a supporting visualization, maybe we'll see our sectors on the x-axis, and we'll look at the volume on the y. I can go ahead and add that supporting visualization using the same steps that I just did for the pivot table. Now, the best part about this, and especially with doing this in Sigma, is that everything is now fully interactive. This is not a static pivot table that I cannot iterate on top of. Instead, it's actually like a jumping off point for me as a user and an analyst. What that means is that I can start to drill into areas of interest here. I notice, for example, that we have a lower than expected volume in technology services. What I might want to do is drill into that. What you'll notice here is that I'm met with all the dimensions, all the attributes of the underlying data. I'm not creating hierarchies or drill down paths to follow a predefined path. Instead, I'm actually just surfing across all the different DIMs and attributes I have access to. So in this case, if I want to maybe just see this sliced by industry, I can go ahead and do that. If I want to drill all the way into the underlying data, I can go ahead and do that as well, because we're leveraging the speed, the scale, the compute of the data warehouse so we can analyze this at scale. Now, if I had maybe spent 10, 20 more minutes on this, what I'm essentially trying to create is a reusable workbook, something that might look like this, where I can have all of my portfolio performance and risk represented in visualizations and give my analyst the ability to start to interrogate, investigate, and explore the data at scale. What we might want to do is understand, hey, what's the composition of these portfolios from an industry perspective? Or you know what, maybe we want to actually see that sliced by QSIP. I can give my users that very freeform ad hoc way of exploring data at scale. I can also do that again on top of pivot tables. So if I want to be able to quickly iterate, drill down, and see this from the sector perspective, maybe we'll see why do we have a downturn in performance. I can see that. I can also jump into explore mode, and even on top of a curated dashboard, drag and drop items up to help customize or tailor my analysis. Now, in this case here, what we're ultimately driving for is understanding if there's room for improvement in our portfolios. We want to take this energy portfolio and actually build out action from it. In this case, what we actually can do is maybe rebalance our portfolio, change the composition of the portfolio, see if that gets us a better return, or better yet, does it mitigate any risk? So let's go ahead to this last tab here, where we'll understand and be able to kind of augment the data to see that what-if analysis. I'll start by filtering on our energy portfolio, and then we'll see a couple of our risk metrics on the right-hand side using value at risk in this case. Now I can use the parameters at the top here to maybe just shift my perspective. Let's look at this over 360 days. Let's look at it over 10 days. We can see all of the kind of analytical content visualizations update accordingly. But ultimately what we want to do is be able to rebalance this portfolio on the fly. Understand if we were to change the composition, does that get us a better performance? Does that get us better return? Or does that help mitigate risk? In order to do that, we're going to leverage what's called a Sigma input table. Sigma input table is essentially kind of like a spreadsheet in your workbook, and it gives your users a very controlled data entry point. It allows your users to augment the data through that manual input while keeping all your data governed, secured in Snowflake or in your cloud data warehouse. If I jump into edit data mode here, you're going to see two groupings of columns. You're going to see QSIP through market value. This is our current holdings data. This data lives in the warehouse today. I cannot edit it, I cannot change it, nor will we ever allow users to change or edit production data. Instead, what we're going to give users the ability to do is augment that data through that manual entry input. Here we have our proposed market value, we have comments, we even are tracking the audit history here. So as a user, I can come in here, I can copy and paste values, start fresh, hit save, and you'll see the var update and equal each other. But then I can start to actually change the values, basically doing like a what if analysis or a scenario analysis. Maybe I want to decrease holdings here. Maybe I want to increase holdings here. Maybe I just want to completely sell this off. Or maybe I want to increase holdings here as well. I can continue putting our values in, testing these, understanding what it looks like from a risk exposure perspective. And I can also add comments as well. Best part about all this is that once I hit save, this data is being stored in the warehouse in a first class table that includes all of the audit history, so it is fully traceable and in your single source of truth. This also obviously allows us to incorporate it back into our analysis. So in this case, I can see immediately if we were to change the makeup of this portfolio, we actually increased our risk exposure by about 4%, which isn't great. But the most important part here is that this data now lives in the warehouse. It's giving your users a controlled data entry point that you can layer any checks and validations on top of, and it allows them to keep that data stored, governed, and secured within your warehouse. And just a quick recap, what we were able to do today was start by using our exploration tab here to build out net new ad hoc content off of our data set that's been governed and endorsed. We added in some additional data through CSV uploads so that we can add in that sector mapping. We then were able to use this dashboard here to interrogate the data, explore the data, understand where there might be room for improvement in our different portfolios. And then lastly, we took an action. We ran that scenario analysis. We saw what the impact of changing the composition of our portfolio could have on our proposed value at risk here. So thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.